So here is the real player. I already slid this piece off and undid the 2 screws here and able to pop this one off. And then the 2 other screws up here and a little finagling to get this one off. And here are the insides. And this is the part that gets scary. So there is a motor pulley here with 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe 4 belts. And this one is broken, clearly. Needs to be replaced. And I'm trying not to wiggle it too much because I want to make sure I get it back where it goes before I forget where it came from. And there's a pulley going, or a belt going to this one, and there's a belt going to this flywheel down here, which is the thing that actually turns the tape through this little spindle. It looks like it's 3.5 inches per minute, or per second speed. It's a very, very skinny spindle. And then there's a 4th wheel here, which does not have a belt on it. And I presume that that's where the broken belt goes, which I had somewhere around here, and now I can't seem to find where I stuck it. But anyway, there's a 4th belt. Oh, somewhere. Oh, here it is. Okay, this 4th belt here may go on that large pulley down there, and I don't know where that actually ends up going. Although it looks like there's a belt missing on this wheel here for turning the counter. So maybe that's where this pulley came from. Actually, yes, now I see it. There's a groove here that is very skinny, and this is a very skinny belt. So this groove captures this belt, and that's supposed to go around to this wheel here to turn the counter. So that's the missing piece of the mystery there. So we've got to replace 4 belts probably. I may as well try to replace them all. It's going to be a pain to get to some of these because I can get the belt onto this pulley. It's really difficult to get it on and off of this wheel down here. That's definitely going to require some disassembly from screws. This thing is a mechanical blunderbuss. We've got contacts galore over here. I don't even know what this thing's for. We've got sliding surfaces galore. All kinds of mechanical things going on here. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. So they've got these I guess volume controls. Apparently somebody really wanted to have them so you slide it with your finger like this. So they had to put gears in and have a pot down here to handle that. This one is even worse. Somebody again really wanted this to be a finger slider, and it has a ramp on the side of this. So you can see as you push this, this cantilever moves. And I bet you that cantilever goes down here to a pot inside there, maybe a sliding pot or something, but that is the most unbelievably awkward mechanism, when it seems like you could have just put a small pot right here, which maybe they didn't have back then. But somebody really wanted this to function like this. And we've got all these mechanical things here. We're going to have to make sure those switches are okay. On the bottom, golly, this thing is so heavy. On the bottom, we have capacitors galore. There's one here, one coming out at a different angle here, electrolytic there. And there's another electrolytic up here. There's probably more. We're just going to have to hunt them down and swap all those out. These paper ones are probably okay, although they do leak a lot. So it might be good to replace those as well. 2 rectifiers down here probably need to be replaced, almost guarantee it. And the biggest problem is this motor, which you probably can't really see there, that green motor, which goes up to the top, is 110% seized, and I cannot turn the top of that even the slightest. And so that motor, if we're lucky, we can unseize it and make it work, but it is fully seized right now. My guess is it probably slowed down, it wasn't greased, and then it dried out and they left it plugged in probably, and so the motor got hot and made it even more seized. And so this is going to be a lot of work probably to get this thing going. My initial assessment, this is going to be a beast. I've got the motor sort of dropped out here, but got to be careful when I tip this over because I don't want to crush the vacuum tube on the front there. Yeah, this motor is being blocked by this piece, by this guy. I could take this resistor out, except the nut is buried under a bunch of resistors over here, and so that just is not even easy to access. It looks to me like I'm going to have to take this whole top plate off. There's a screw here and a screw here and a bunch of brackets on the side that have to come off, and there's stuff on the bottom that has to come off. Then there's all the mechanical linkages attached to things, but that is going to be necessary to access the motor and other stuff. And while I'm up here, I can see way down at the bottom there another electrolytic capacitor that's going to need to be probably replaced or bypassed or something. So, goodness gracious, how am I going to get to that cap? I don't know. That's buried in there somewhere. Oof. So this is going to be quite a job here. A lot of disassembly, I think. Kind of funny, there's a light bulb right here. Seems to be there for no reason. It's probably a ballast, just to make sure something doesn't overheat. Alright, well, here we go. Well, this is by far the most complicated piece of equipment I think I've ever worked on. This thing has more surprises in it than I can even imagine. This winding here is an electromagnet that is used to pull a brake or something here. This looks like a brake that's attached to this wheel. However, it's more than just a solenoid for that. It's also got switches on it that activate when the solenoid pulls, and so those have to be clean. The switches have to work. The mechanical part has to actually function, or the switches won't even activate. And that's not the only one. There's a second one down here on the bottom, which is another electromagnet. A little hard to see here, but you can barely make out some windings in there. A little bit of a coil. That one does not have contacts on it, but I mentioned before there's a ton of contacts here. There's another set of contacts down here that are all mechanically connected. And this thing just gets more complicated the more I look at it. I cannot actually separate this because apparently what they did was wire it after they assembled it. So these white wires here are too short to allow me to pull this apart anymore. And those white wires go somewhere up here to something that I think are soldered in. Wouldn't dare unsolder those because I'd have to keep track of every wire, and it just has a massive amount of complications every which way here. And so we might just include this one in the console as a museum piece and not bother fixing it, but I would like to get this motor out and see if I can get the motor turning, because nothing happens unless the motor's turning. So my goal is to get that motor out somehow and try to unfreeze it. I'm still struggling like crazy to get this motor out. So it turns out there's wires coming from the back of the motor that go to this capacitor, which was way buried down there, and it seems like I have to get the motor out this way through this hole because I can't take the top cover off. I still haven't figured out if the flange here will actually fit through that hole. Part of the problem is it's banging against this plate here. I can't get that plate off because the other side of these screws are nuts that are inaccessible from anywhere so far. So I'm not sure I'll be able to take that plate off. This is still soldered to this capacitor. I'll probably have to desolder some wires to get the motor out that way. But this capacitor has a nut on the bottom of the side here, which was blocked by another piece of metal. So it was, I managed to get this piece in here to get the nut, to try to get the nut off. I couldn't put an axle through here to actually turn it, so I had to turn it with pliers. This thing is unbelievable. But anyway, now that I can see this, it's a 5 microfarad 220 volt capacitor. Let's see, so actually it says 330 volts AB25. I don't know why there's 2 voltage ratings on here, because it's clearly only one capacitor. Anyway, golly, what a nightmare. So, still haven't gotten the motor out. I'm going to see if I can manage to finagle it out. A miracle has occurred. I got this motor out. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get it back in, but I got it out. So, time to check this thing out for how to grease it up. This is definitely one of the strangest motors I've ever seen. So, actually this whole housing here is what rotates, which I can't quite demo now. This housing here is what spins when the pulley spins, and it's very stiff still right now, but I've been putting WD-40 in the joints as wherever I can find them to try to loosen it up. It's getting a little bit looser, but it's still really tight, so it'll take a while. It's a very strange motor. Well, I figured nothing to lose. Let me just take this bracket off, and all it is on the bottom is a ball, and I did finally notice, with a little bit of Sherlock Holmes's help, there's a little slot here that leads down inside, and I thought maybe that is an oil spot. So I sprayed some of my WD-40 in there, and lo and behold, we are pretty much free as a bird now. I actually thought this whole axle was going to come off when I took this little clip off the front here. That didn't do a darn thing, so I have no idea what this is for, but I should probably put it back on. And I could see the dust stain where it used to sit, so I know exactly where it's supposed to go. It matters. So I'll pop that back on. But I think we are close now to having a motor that actually works. So that's awesome. Yeah, this guy came from right here, and this is the new one. Little 22 microfarad 350 volt cap. Okay, this part is so bizarre, I just had to show it. So before I showed this knob here, which has a little ramp on it. It might be a little hard to see here, but there's a metal piece right here that moves up and down as you turn this on a little plastic ramp. And over here, if you can see, this piece is moving up and down, like so. And that goes to a bank, if ever there was such a word, of contacts here. And there's a little metal piece in there that is sliding back and forth inside those contacts. So we definitely need to spray that with our good old friend Mr. Deoxit here, and make sure that those contacts are happy and clean all the way up and down whole system here. There's a lot of contacts in here. Try that a little more carefully after I put the camera down, but that is the mechanism in there that I'm trying to clean. Boy, that's a really bizarre structure there. I don't know how they made something so complicated. But anyway, you find stuff everywhere in this thing. Okay, this is so insane that I just had to show you. I see some contacts here. Oh, and there's a set behind it. And a set behind that. And a set behind that. You can't see down the bottom of there. But I counted, if I counted correctly, there are 12 sets of contacts that span the entire length of this chassis all the way to the bottom. There's absolutely no way to clean them. And so I just hope that they're okay. All the way to the bottom. That is just truly unbelievable. Why would anyone go to such an incredible length to get that to work? Wow. And there's just contacts everywhere. Here's another relay down here. I already cleaned 2 more somewhere else. There's sets of contacts all down the side here. Let's see. Yeah, here's a bunch of sets of contacts here. There's a set of contacts here. This thing is a contact blunderbuss. I mean, there's just contacts everywhere. So if one of those contacts is bad, the whole thing will not function correctly. Unbelievable. Well, let's just hope it works. Well, the play belt is, not fixed yet, so we can't really verify that this works. I'm trying to pull the tape through here, and I was hoping to see something on this tuning eye tube here as an indication that there was sound going through it, but I'm not seeing anything. Could just be that I'm at a dead spot between the tape and the tape. But what does work is the fast forward. So if I fast forward here, it'd be cool if I saw something on that little tuning eye indicator here. It's hard to see if there's any kind of signal showing up there. It's pretty cool seeing the reels spin. I guess if I forward this all onto one tape, it would be kind of convenient too. At least I'll have all the tape on one reel instead of half the tape on both reels. So I guess I'll just let this go for a while until it's done fast forwarding. Alright, got my new belts here from McMaster. That guy and this one here. These are the 50 durometer belts. They're nice and soft. Silicone, they'll last a long time. So I think I have it plugged in. Go ahead and turn this on. Things are turning like they should. And if I press fast forward, now my fast forward works and the counter starts counting. And if I press rewind, then the rewinder starts spinning. If I press this button, which is actually called start, nothing spins. So I am trying to figure out why. Now I did figure out, see what you want here is you want this reel to be just a little bit loose compared to the bottom. So there's two parts to this bottom reel. The bottom one's spinning really fast and the top half is not moving at all because there's a brake on it here. When this piece moves, it pulls the belt up to the top one, and that happens when I hit rewind. This piece moved up, the belt is on the top of the two things here, and now the top spins and I can't stop it really. And if I hit stop, you see this guy drop down and this goes back to the brake condition. For play, you do want a little bit of slip between this one and the bottom one because you're controlling the speed of the film by this piece here, and so this necessarily has to slip with relation to the bottom. So this piece is in the correct position for play. What's not in the right position is this brake. We got to get this brake needs to come off during play, and the way that would happen is if this gets pulled, now that wheel spins freely, except that it has a little bit of friction to it. And I can't quite demonstrate that with one hand, but maybe I can. I'll use that with my pinky, and I can slow this thing down with my finger. The bottom piece is still spinning really fast, the top piece is spinning slower. And that's how it has to work in order to get play to function. Now what controls this? Well, an electromagnet. And I know that electromagnet works because when I press rewind, lo and behold, this moves. And so the electromagnet back here, which is buried under the back, looks like a transformer. It's actually an electromagnet. So that actually does work. The question in my mind is when I press this button, which is marked as start, it's not marked as play. It says start there. When I press that button, why does this brake not come off? And I don't know the answer to that yet. I feel like there might be something on the front here that I'm missing. For example, I still don't know what these three buttons are. There's these hieroglyphics here. A circle with looks like a backwards Q. And then there's a square rectangle and then a circle with a line under it. One of those two is record, and I think one of those two is play. This one I think might be microphone. And remember, I had that really cool little microphone back here. So we might actually try plugging that in and see if we can get something to happen when we press that button. But maybe is it one of these three buttons needs to be pressed in order to get that play thing to turn on. That I don't know. So I think I've tried it in all possible configurations here, and it doesn't seem to do that. Yeah, none of those seem to turn on, unleash the brake. There's also this button over here, RS, which has a number of contacts in it, and when you press the R down, the RS button down, the tuning eye tube comes on, which seems to me to indicate that that R means record, although I don't know what the S means. And it looks like you should be able to rotate this thing because the S is on the bottom and the R is on the top, but you can only rotate it to the 10 o'clock position or press it in and go to the noon, so that's kind of strange. But anyway, that might be a record level, and maybe I'll be able to see the microphone when I have that in the R setting. But that also doesn't release this play lever, so I still have to figure out how to get that thing to release so that we can play tape actually. That still is a mystery to me. I have start but not play. Just realized an obvious mistake. This one is rewind, this one is forward. If I hit rewind, the numbers count backwards. And if I hit forward, fast forward, the numbers don't do anything because it's not pulling on this reel. But that is the play direction and the fast forward direction. So fast forward, fast rewind, start, doesn't say play, it says start, and stop. And you have to press stop before you press any of those three buttons. So this is the back of that console again, and I'm looking at the lid here, and I would really like this lid that when I open it, the power turns on, when I close it, the power turns off. And while I had everything out inside of here, I found that it would be super easy. The lid is attached to this metal bracket, which is magnetic, so I just stuck a magnet on one end of it, and I have a reed switch here inside of which I've hot glued to the wall so it doesn't move, and that reed switch has these two red wires going to it. Two red wires come, right now they come down here to my meter clips, and I've got it set up so that when I touch the tips of these together I get a beep on my meter. So that tells me if the reed switch is on or off. So right now the reed switch is off. Now as you open the lid, that magnet gets closer and closer, and at some point it turns on the reed switch. Lo and behold. Off, on, off, on. Very, very easy to add this contraption. And so now what we're going to do is take that reed switch wire and wire it into a solid state relay here, and we have a power supply. It'll be 12 volts because this is a 4 to 32 volt input. So the power supply will go through the reed switch and into the relay. That way when the door opens, the relay turns on. When the relay turns on, the high voltage side will be connected here to everything inside the box, and that will turn on the radio, the tape deck, and also the reel player. Also the record player, all at the same time. So that is my current idea of how to do something really cool with this. And actually, because this can run as low as 4 volts, I was planning to include a Bluetooth module in here so that you could play music through your phone. Well, that's got a 5 volt power supply, so I could use that 5 volt power supply constantly on, and then going through the reed switch so that when the door opens, everything turns on. And I only have one extra power supply, which would be that 5 volt supply for the Bluetooth module. So I don't know, this is like, when I get an idea like this, I want to build it so bad because it looks so easy to do and it adds so much to the console. You know, I think it would be awesome to have all that stuff built in, even if I do leave the speakers original.